Hello and welcome to the F1 Rolling Start podcast. I'm James.
I'm Ben.
And we are so excited that you have joined us this week. We're two Americans who have absolutely fallen in love with the sport Formula One, and we are on a journey to becoming experts around this. Whether you like it or not, we are talking about the 2023 season. There may not be a race, but we are jumping into the offseason by breaking down each one of the teams and their performance over the 2023 year. And this week is special because we are diving into F1 royalty, Ferrari.
We're talking about one of the most storied teams in F1 history, what they mean to this sport, what this sport means to them. We're talking about all of that today. We're also going to be diving into the 2023 season. It wasn't what Ferrari wanted because they know they have more. They know that they can be great. They are the greatest team in the history of F1. But there were moments, even in all the disappointment and all the frustration, the failure, there were moments when that team shone through, where we saw what they were capable of. And so we're diving into the season, into the results, and we're going to be talking about the teammates.
The driver and pairing of the season.
The closest two drivers on the track, talking about how they raced this year. And also we're going to wildly speculate.
Because we can.
About the future of these teammates, the future of this team. It's all coming at you in this episode.
It's going to be an incredible episode. Make sure you stay for all of it. As always, we are going under the helmet and over the top. So let's go. Before we jump into our Ferrari review of 2023, we have to give away some mugs. Every week we drink out of some incredibly expensive mugs. This week, Ben went to
Goodwill
and got us a few mugs. I have Friends of the Watts Tower for Arts and Center
Coffee
stuff.
And Tea Collective.
Great.
Wherever they are.
We are drinking, it's Christmas time. So we're drinking
Merry Christmas.
Some Negronis out of these.
Fantastic.
And so sign up for all things F1 Rolling Start to your chance to win some mugs. And talking about winning mugs, two of our avid listeners have won some mugs this week. First is Joshua Jones. So you will be getting a mug. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Our second winner is Luis Quinones. Appreciate you. Huge fan of the show, friends of the show, really. So thank you all for your support, and you'll be getting these mugs this next week.
If you want your chance to win one of our highly sought after show mugs, go ahead and sign up for our newsletter in whatever show notes you're watching or listening on.
Absolutely.
And you can have your chance to win. But it is Ferrari time.
I am so excited.
Are you part of the Tifosi after this season?
No,
neither.
But I can appreciate them. And my family's Italian. So there's a part of me that...
I've been to Italy.
You've been there.
We're drinking Negronis, which are Italian.
I know.
Oh, we nailed it.
I know. So much synchronization there. So this week we're talking about Ferrari. Now here's the thing about Ferrari. Ferrari is the winningest team in Formula One history. Period. There's a couple stats I want to just throw out there to kind of set the context as we're thinking about Ferrari, about this incredible team. So just by the numbers, they have raced in 1,074 Grand Prix. A staggering number.
That's staggering for so many reasons, considering the fact that last year had the most F1 races in a season ever, and that was 22.
Yeah. It's unreal how many races these folks have been in. They've been in this sport for decades. So 1,074 Grand Prix. They've had 15 driver championships, 16 constructor championships. They have, and this is a real fun stat, 10,557.77 points. Don't know where the 0.77.
Yeah, we actually, so this is fun. Go ahead and throw it in the comments. If you know why Ferrari has 10,557.77 points, let us know.
Please.
I think it's a combination of, like, you know, when a race doesn't go like the full length and then they stop it and give like partial points.
Some
but
weird
0.77?
Yeah,
I don't know
weird.
how that works.
It's
Please,
weird.
someone let us know.
Yeah, we're at a loss. Let us know. So they've got, incredible drivers and constructors championships. Some of the greats have raced with them. They have 818 podiums. 243 of those are first place. 295 of those are second. 280 are third place. So
just think about that for a second. 1,074 races, 818 podiums. That's an almost 80% podium rate as a constructor.
That's staggering.
80% of the time they go to a race, they expect to be at least on the podium. That is wild.
This team, there's some American comparisons I'd like to throw out there, and it's kind of funny because we literally thought of these.
Putting our show notes together, we ended up having almost the exact same comparisons.
Yeah. So Ferrari is the New York Yankees of baseball. I'm talking the New York Yankees during the years where they were dominating, the Derek Jeter years, when they were going to the World Series.
I'm talking Babe Ruth.
You can go even further back. Pick any year.
They're iconic.
They are iconic. They are the New England Patriots of football when Tom Brady is dominating, when he's coming back, when he's overcoming the odds. They are the Chicago Bulls of basketball during the Jordan years. Like, Ferrari is at that level in F1.
And beyond the pairing, what I love about your comparisons are the idea of, like, you have the player along with the team.
Yeah.
But if you were to remove the players, Ferrari to Formula One is what Lakers, the Bulls, Yankees. I grew up in Australia. You don't know very many football teams, but
did you follow American sports?
No, but you know who the Dallas Cowboys are.
Yeah,
Cowboys
absolutely.
is American football.
Absolutely.
Ferrari is synonymous with Formula One
and with an entire country.
Exactly.
Right. There are few countries, if any, that like Haas is not synonymous with America, right? Like, when people think of America, they don't think of Haas. No. When people think of Italy and any type of racing, they think of Ferrari, period, right? So they are legendary. And here's the insane thing, though. And yet, the last year they won the Constructors' Championship was 2008, 15 years ago. So you have this team, and even in 2008, Lewis won the Drivers' Championship. It was 2007 with Kimi Räikkönen when they won the Drivers' Championship for them. So Ferrari is essentially the indisputable pound for pound historic heavyweight champion of the F1 world, but it has been literally a decade and a half since they've been anywhere close to who they are, to who they were. And so
exactly,
they're a shell, and they've been that way. So a fascinating team, though, to dive in, especially this season.
Yeah, exactly. I think what's interesting is that, to say that there's no Formula One without Ferrari would be true.
Absolutely.
But also to say there's no Ferrari without Formula One would be true. Because Henry Ford may have made the Model T on the assembly line and exploded the automobile into homes across the world. But when it comes to performance cars, Enzo Ferrari was on the map, and his pride and joy was Formula One. They've been in it from the beginning. When you go to any child and you say, what is a fast car? Draw me a fast car. They're going to draw you a red Ferrari. They are going to do it. It is performance. When you think of a car and you go, what's the fastest car in the world? I would bet all the money in my pocket and yours, all $32
Lots
of it, that 80% of the people on the street would go Ferrari.
Yeah.
Ferrari. Yeah. Ferrari. You ask a little boy what their dream car is, it's Ferrari. They are steeped in history, in pedigree, and power across the years. The expectation is a massive weight on the Formula One team that is Ferrari, and for good reason.
For absolutely good reason. When you have that history that you bring to every single race, it's stunning to me that the expectation doesn't crush the team principle or crush the drivers. You have the weight.
Well, it has.
We will get into that. It absolutely has. So you have this incredible history, and then you have this year and the last couple years where Ferrari hasn't been able to get in touch with their identity, with their DNA from the past. They've been struggling. And so I think it might be a good time to shift to this season.
100%.
So really quickly, just high-level numbers. So Ferrari finished third in the championship. They were only 3 points behind Mercedes. They were chasing them down at the very last race. We can talk a little more about that when we get into the actual races. Charles Leclerc finished fifth with 206 points. Carlos Sainz, his teammate, finished seventh with 200 points.
Wow.
So,
super close.
They were really, really close as far as teammates go. But this season was kind of all over the map for them. And I think, my question to you, James, is what races stood out to you for this season, and kind of why do you feel those races stood out?
Yeah, I think the races this year that were interesting to me, obviously the ones the one win that Carlos had in Singapore stands out, but even before that, I think the story of this year coming into it was, okay, they were second last year.
Yeah.
2022, they ended second.
They were competitive at the beginning of last year.
Super competitive. I mean, it had flip-flopped between Mercedes taking it to Red Bull to all of a sudden Ferrari was taking it to Red Bull.
They were winning races at the beginning of the year.
I mean, it was the people that were in contention for the title. It was Charles Leclerc after the first three races, and Russell was in second in 2022. Like, that's crazy. Obviously, we know how that paired out. But the reality for me is that what we saw this year was it came in with, okay, we're going after Red Bull. And then all of a sudden, it went away from them, and it shifted to, instead of us taking it to Red Bull, we're going to take it to Mercedes.
Yeah.
And that didn't work out for them either. And
No.
so for the last 15 years, we're going to take it to Mercedes because they won the last 8 constructors, and then we're going to take it to Red Bull because they've won the last constructors. And it feels like we are just in a cyclical moment with Ferrari where they're stuck in the second and third place, and they just can't figure out how to get back to winning races. And this year was the same. They flip-flopped with Mercedes. They were second in 22. They had beaten Mercedes by 39 points. This year, they finished third, and they were beat by 3 points by Mercedes. So Mercedes made a jump.
Yep.
Ferrari stepped backward. It's an intense sport for real. Yeah. But the reality is that Mercedes should not have had second place this year had Ferrari improved like they did the year before. But I think for me, we started the season out at the beginning with Azerbaijan.
We did. So
I always hear that in the Drive to Survive, the yelling voice. Azerbaijan.
So I had a hard time even remembering back that far. But this was kind of a crazy
so far long ago.
This is kind of a crazy point. This was the point of the season we thought Checo was going to take it to Max.
Mm-hmm.
We thought, wow, Checo is actually going for it. We've got a race on our hands. We've got a championship fight on our hands. How wrong were we? We didn't know any better, but we were. But in Azerbaijan, Charles qualifies P1.
Yeah.
And this was early enough on to where I feel like there was some hope that maybe there was a chance for Ferrari to actually take the win. Maybe they actually were getting things right. It didn't end out that way.
No, because Charles he got a podium. He got third place, and Carlos ended in fifth. But that seemed to be a bit of the story across the season of 2023, is that they had a car that could qualify well. It just could not keep up in the race.
Yeah, and this is actually the story of Charles Leclerc. He has qualified so well.
The guy's a machine when it comes to qualifying.
He can put in the fastest lap, but he's run the risk now of setting the record for the most P1 starts without an actual title.
And is that a record you want, Ben?
No, it's not. Because guess what? Nobody remembers what happens on Saturday.
Hey.
I don't even remember who's really second or third place on Sunday. I remember who's first.
That's right.
So this was something where Azerbaijan, it was an interesting race. We saw speed. He couldn't capitalize and win the race. Italy was the next one that I thought was really interesting. Obviously,
man, Ferrari threw everything at Monza.
They were
the temple of speed.
Didn't they bring out a new engine?
Both cars had new engines. They were.
You gotta perform.
They went all out, and it looked really good. They qualified
really
well. They raced. They raced well, but they did not end the way that they wanted it to.
No. I mean, just Sainz taking pole was almost enough for the Tifosi, for the famed, fanatical Ferrari fans. Because here's the thing, they all knew they weren't going to win. But just the fact that he got pole was something that was enough for them. But Sainz actually in this race, he stays ahead of Charles. The Ferraris went racing, which I thought was really interesting, being that they were in front of their fans, being that there was the chance for them to potentially crash out. Ted Vasseur let them go racing, which I thought was really interesting, which we appreciated because it was some great racing.
We are big fans of Freddie.
No, I love
the
Freddie.
F1 Rolling Start podcast. We love Freddie Vasseur. Yeah, they did all right in Italy, but again, all right.
Yeah.
So Sainz went from qualifying P1, finishing P3, which pretty much sums up Ferrari's season as a whole.
Charles was chasing him down to the last corner.
Finished P4. They were like, he was on his tail. Yeah. It was a good show, but again, it was not what they were looking for.
No, but realistically, here's the thing. Realistically, I don't think they thought they were going to win in Monza. I think they were trying to throw everything at the wall to see what stuck. But at that point in the season, it was becoming quite evident where the season was going. I want to say at that point, Max was just already, Max had won all but 2 races at that point, and we're almost halfway through the season, right? So I do think they threw everything at the wall to see what stuck. The next race, though, was the stunner. It was Singapore.
Yeah, but man, I'm so 50-50 on Singapore.
Here's the thing. When Singapore happened,
I'm never excited for Singapore.
But everyone was kind of losing their minds that there was the potential for someone to beat Red Bull.
Yeah, it was the perfect storm. Red Bull couldn't get their feet together the whole weekend.
Yeah, Red Bull looked like
perfection is not guaranteed.
The Renault engine in their car. I was like, wait, who are you right
here?
Yeah,
exactly. They called Cyril back up and was wondering if he could go give some engine points. Can you
design our engine for us, please? But Singapore, I thought was obviously it was a high point for Ferrari. Sainz takes pole. He ends up proving to be this strategic wizard.
Well, what it highlights is the lack of strategy that was coming from the Ferrari wall.
We've talked about that before. It absolutely underscored that, and that was exciting to see a driver able to do strategy. It was also reminiscent of the strategic blunders of the team in years past.
Yes,
that their pit wall is taking direction from their driver.
It was the same when they had Vettel driving for them. It was rough. Yeah. It was constantly shifting and changing, and the questions that would come back over the radar when drivers would talk to them on the pit wall, and then the strategists, the engineers would say back, "What do you think?" And you're like, "Guys, they're going around a corner at like 140 miles an hour. They're really hoping that you're doing the thinking part for them at this point in time." Yeah, you know what I mean.
I just hear Max, not in the braking. Don't talk to me in the braking. It's like, what? I don't have time to think.
No, don't do this to me, guys. That's Carlos Sainz. Don't do this to me, guys.
But anyway, so Italy, Singapore, back to back. We see Sainz just pull it out. He does a strategic, incredible move at the end where he tows Lando Norris with him, keeps him out of reach of the Mercedes. Frickin' George Russell goes crashing on like the second to last lap. And it's the first time we see another team besides Red Bull win.
First and only.
It was Freddie's first win.
It was Freddie's first win in Formula One, period. Which is crazy to think about.
I didn't know that, actually. Yeah. That's stunning.
So it was his first win in Formula One period, which is super exciting. It was an amazing moment. I don't, at the end of the day, what happens at a Sunday when those fireworks go off at the finish line and whoever crosses that line first is the winner. I don't know if it's an indication of how strong Ferrari was this year. I think it was an off weekend for Red Bull, and I think Ferrari made the most of it.
Yeah, and you saw what Formula One this year would have looked like if Max wasn't a demigod and wasn't...
Yeah, kind of, but everyone was so tight up the entire... Like, Singapore was actually a pretty boring race.
But, yes, and the three teams that were scrapping towards the end were Mercedes, McLaren, Ferrari.
Yeah.
And you saw how close those three were.
Yeah. Two Mercedes powered teams and one Ferrari powered team.
And so that was the piece of it where it's like, okay, if Max is out of the picture, this is actually maybe the picture that we get. You'd see these three teams who are way more evenly matched actually fighting.
So true. Singapore was definitely interesting, I think. All I'm saying is I don't know if it's reminiscent of, I think it was a lucky weekend for Ferrari.
Yeah, I mean, someone had to pick up the pieces.
They had to. 100%.
Dropped the ball. So
100%. I agree.
It happened to be them.
The next one is Mexico. Mexico for Ferrari was somewhat comical.
Mexico?
There were Ferrari fans getting beaten up in the grandstands in Mexico because of the crash that Leclerc had with Checo that he literally couldn't avoid, and Checo admitted that he couldn't avoid. Yet people were getting beat up in the streets of Mexico because of this crash. Checo crashes with Charles, but Charles still has the ability to hold on to that podium. It was an amazing race.
It really was. Like, if you think about it, he goes out with Checo.
Yep.
First turn.
Yep.
Gets damaged and still ends up on the podium. Third place. Sainz ended up in fourth place.
Yep.
So Mexico, obviously the main headline story was that Checo crashes out in front of the hundreds of thousands of Mexican fans who were there. But as far as Ferrari goes, they actually had a good haul of points. Their drivers were really close on that race. And you see Charles pull it out after sustaining damage. So overall it was good to see them score high. Vegas was the next one.
Man, this was an interesting race for Ferrari.
This one was really fascinating. So again, so much has been said about Vegas. We've talked about Vegas. Everyone who has a brain and a mouth and loves F1 has talked about Vegas. But the thing about Vegas was you've got these guys racing a street track they've never raced before. No one's ever raced before. It's freezing cold. Well, it wasn't freezing cold, but the tires had a hard time gripping. So you've got these guys sliding all over the place. And
it was cold. It was so cold.
Here's the thing. I remember us walking around and being like, I thought it was going to be colder.
Yeah.
But the track was really cold. The track was essentially the same temperature as...
What are you, a thermos? I was freezing on those in-house seats. I was so
I
cold.
Had this hoodie on.
I was so cold. I mean, I don't get cold.
Being from Ohio, you know?
Yeah. You're built different. Farm boy.
Yeah, farm boy. That's hysterical because I didn't grow up on a farm at all. There's actual farm boys that I know.
Although you grew up on an Amish farm in Ohio.
No, God. Jesus.
Why do you have 14 siblings?
I grew up
in an Amish thing only?
In Cleveland, no. Something's in the water up there. It's different.
Vegas.
Charles
Leclerc.
He comes back in the final lap.
In the final seconds. It was
Checo.
It was incredible.
For second place. And this is, I feel like he was leading the race.
Oh, he was leading
at one point as well. And so, like,
I thought he was going to win the race.
Because Max goes into the pits.
Yes.
And you see Charles is leading the race and he's way ahead. And you're like,
I mean, we were sitting there and Charles would go by and then nothing. Just silence. And then the next car would go by. And for a while, it was like Charles and Checo was in second.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
it was nuts.
He drove really it so well. He did really well. The thing that was the blunder, and it's hard to say that this was Ferrari's blunder here, but Checo and Max both got new tires. This was during one of the, I think it was one of the safety cars.
Yeah, if it wasn't for a safety car, Charles, I would have most definitely won that race.
Because here's the challenge. He had just come in a couple laps before, so his tires were still really new. It wouldn't have made sense.
Well, the problem was that it was a real safety car, so what it did is he lost his entire lead. Yeah. So everyone was right behind him again. And more importantly, Max was right behind everybody. And so he just started carving his way through the field. And at that point, when Max is on a mission, you have no chance.
You're done.
If you don't have a solid lead, which I think at one point he had at least a 2-second lead over second place, which is huge.
Oh yeah, no,
he had definitely driven the pants off of that race.
I wish he actually would have won that race.
It would have been.
I feel like he deserved it.
Yeah,
it was just the safety car that essentially stole the race from him.
He may have deserved it, but in the end, in Formula One, whoever crosses that line first wins it. And that's all that matters.
Last race where I was really impressed with Charles Leclerc was Abu Dhabi. You've got Ferrari trying to hunt down Mercedes. You've got, just like Sainz, you now have Charles, and he's playing out strategy as he's going 200 miles an hour, trying to find a way to get the 5-second penalty that Checo has eliminated by backing up Russell so that Checo can get far enough ahead. I think if he would have done it a few laps earlier, potentially, but there wasn't that available to him. But you see him strategizing, you see him performing at a really high level, hunting down Mercedes, putting the team on his back. Sainz was nowhere. If Sainz had showed up, they would have taken second place. Exactly. Sainz didn't show up. He DNF'd at the very end, where he just didn't actually finish. I think he was 18th or something like that, but I believe he just came
he didn't finish. Yeah.
So, and this is the thing about Ferrari this year is you've seen the drivers really kind of neck and neck.
Yep.
But in this moment where the season depends on it, who comes through? It's Leclerc. He comes through.
Yeah, yes, I agree.
In that moment, he came through.
If you look at their finishing record, Charles is more consistent.
I mean, they're really close.
If you look at their qualifying record, it's pretty close. If you look at their points, they were the closest. I mean, you told me this. They were the closest out of everybody.
Literally, I did a quick number crunch because
you love your numbers.
I do. It tells a story. Look at the numbers. It'll tell you the story. Tell you the story. Just look at the story. So there's 10 teams in F1. 5 of them don't matter for this exercise. So I'm only looking at the top 5 teams because once you're down, I don't know, at the bottom and each driver has a couple points, of course they're going to be close in points. It doesn't matter. So for this exercise, I'm looking at Red Bull, Mercedes, Aston, McLaren, and Ferrari. The 5 teams are actually competitive. So which teammates were closest in points? So Max obviously is first with a whopping 575 points. His teammate Checo is second, but is nowhere near him in the points. 285. There's a 290 point gap between Max and Checo. Checo could have scored 285 more points and still would be losing to Max. It's insane. So that's Red Bull.
Wrong week, Bang. Wrong week.
That's Red Bull and Checo. We'll get to them. Mercedes, Hamilton is third with 234. Russell's eighth with 175. There's a 59 point gap between the Mercedes.
Pretty normal.
Which is pretty normal. And they were actually right there.
You would still call them a pretty good mixture.
You would still call them a pretty competitive. Aston Martin, Alonso's fourth. He has 206 points. Stroll is 10th with 74. There's a 132 point gap. So they're a little bit further.
Further apart.
But we were talking about that all season. McLaren, you've got Lando at 6th. He has 205. Piastri's 9th. He has 97, 108 points separating. So at this point, everyone is over 100 points separate from each other except for Mercedes.
Yep.
And then we come to Ferrari. Charles is 5th with 206 points. Carlos is 7th with 200. They are 6 points apart.
Closest.
They are the closest out of the competitive teams, out of the ones who were fighting for podiums, because all of these teams were fighting for podiums this season. And so I think this was the strength of Ferrari this year, is they have two drivers who, and maybe this is, kind of a, not the most sophisticated word, but I think they have two alpha drivers. And you could argue for most teams, all these guys are alphas. Usually, though,
there's one that is definitely unspoken, even if it
unspoken.
Is. You look at Alonso and Stroll, everyone knows it's Alonso.
Of course.
You look at Norris and Piastri's still a rookie, everyone knows it's Norris. You look at Hamilton and Russell, Hamilton's 7th, Max, Checo, Albon, Sargent, Bottas, Guan Yu Zhou.
It's unspoken.
It goes on.
We know who is the alpha. But with Ferrari, you don't.
No.
You don't.
Ferrari's in a league where there's only really 3 teams where you're kind of like, I don't know who is better. And Ferrari is one of those teams. The other we don't talk about.
I'm trying to think of which other you're referring to.
It's Haas and Alpine.
Yeah.
Those are the only two others where you're not entirely sure who the alpha is.
We don't care.
I agree. I think what's interesting to me, okay, I'm a mad fan of Charles Leclerc. I think he is an incredible driver. I think he is definitely going to be a world champion. 100%. And that takes a lot for me to say.
I hope that he is.
I don't know if he will be at Ferrari,
I think he's young enough.
I think he will be a world champion. I think he's got the driver.
Yeah.
Carlos won the only race in a season where Red Bull dominated. So Carlos gets a light that shined on him. But when you look at their race to race, Charles outperformed him 11 times.
Yeah.
Carlos 9 times.
Mm-hmm.
So 3 times across the season.
And there was some disqualifications and DNFs 100%. And all those things as well.
But here's the stat that blows my mind.
Okay.
When you think about Ferrari, you think about, okay, who's doing what for us? In the last 3 races of the season, Mercedes scored 38 points.
Okay.
In the last 3 races of the season, Charles Leclerc scored 40.
Wow.
So you have a guy that, and I think rightfully so, Ferrari loves.
Yeah.
Qualifies super well.
Yeah.
He's one of the only people that on track this year you really saw take it to max.
Yeah.
He knows how to lead a race. He knows how to hold the lead of a race.
Mm-hmm.
He is respected up and down the field, desired up and down the field. And I think for me, when it comes down to the team, Ferrari failed their drivers, but they most definitely failed Charles this year because he is, in my mind, he is the alpha on the team.
Yeah, this is so interesting to me. When I think of these two guys, more so than any other drivers, that historic sibling rivalry of Jacob and Esau comes to my mind. Where
biblical on it,
but we're really, when I think of these two drivers, I think of two forces of nature, very different in how they race, in how they conduct themselves, and how they kind of approach the sport. But they're two forces nonetheless. And I do think Ferrari leans towards Charles. They prefer him. He is their guy. But at the same time, Carlos doesn't back down.
No.
And he
shouldn't.
And he shouldn't. And so this is the fascinating thing, though. Carlos, I believe, deserves a shot to be the front man at Ferrari. I don't think he's going to get it.
No, not while Charles Leclerc is there.
And that's the
and I don't know if Ferrari views Carlos as the possible number one.
I don't think they do.
You also have to think about who their team boss is now. Like, Freddie Vasseur is the one who called Charles into Alfa Romeo.
They go back.
They go way back.
But here's the thing I love about this, though. This is the thing I love about this. I love when the person who's overlooked, right? We're F1. These guys are making millions of dollars,
Yeah.
Boo-hoo, you're overlooked. But I love when you've got a driver who has the chip on his shoulder, who's got something to prove, and then he actually does it. Like, he doesn't do it over the entire season. Obviously, his teammate beats him in the end. But there were significant moments in Monza, in Singapore,
100%.
where he actually brought it. He delivered. He gave the team the win for this. And then Silverstone last year. He brought it last year too. Sainz won Silverstone last year.
Yes.
And there was a moment when Ferrari is asking him to back up the pack so that Charles, who's ahead, who's in the lead, can have more of a gap. And he's like,
heck no.
What are you asking
Absolutely
me to do?
not.
I'm going for the win. And so that kind of tenacity and never back down, I love seeing that in a driver, because it says, hey, what are we talking about? First guy, second guy here. I'm going to actually.
I am the guy.
I'm the guy. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to win.
Yeah.
And so you're right. Ferrari's got the number one guy. I don't think Sainz believes it, though.
No. And here's the thing, too. When you look at it season over season, Sainz is the most improved.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at his results from 3 years ago to what they are now, granted, there's teams in between there and all that. Well, the last 4 or 5 years in Formula One, he's only gotten better and better and better. The hard thing for Charles is that he came in and he started performing really, really well.
Yeah.
And then he went to Ferrari and he did really, really well at Ferrari. I mean, the guy outscored Sebastian Vettel, the 4-time world champion. Like,
it's insane.
He's an incredible driver. And so he is their golden boy. They gave him the longest contract that Ferrari has ever given somebody in the history of a team that's been in it since the beginning. Like,
I know, right?
They don't do that.
That's saying something.
But they did it for him. They believe that he is the future of Ferrari.
Yeah, no, they do.
Excuse me.
I'm interested to see and to think about really what the future of this duo is. For some reason, I'll just say this. Both of their contracts are up this next year.
Yep. Along with 10 other people.
There are rumors swirling. I've had to fact check quite a few articles today.
Which is very hard considering that.
Which is very hard. There's an Italian news source that has
Please tell me it's the Gazzetti.
I don't know what it is. I don't think
the Gazzetti is a hoot to read. If you ever want to laugh, just go read the Gazzetti. Translate it. Google Translate it, do it for you. It is hilarious.
I don't think it is. But they have rumored that Charles has reportedly signed a new contract extension with Ferrari through 2029 that doubles what he is making now. Now, that is rumored. It's acknowledged by other sources, by Sky News, but team boss Fred Vasseur has said that he is not in a rush to sign his drivers. He has not confirmed that has happened, even though Sky News has said that this is what's rumored. They are saying that Charles has actually signed an extension. This was as of the recording of this episode. This is where it's at. So
that's crazy.
So that's out there right now. But it's yet to be confirmed. And it seems that Freddie is taking a book out of Mercedes in how they're dealing with their drivers. He still has his drivers both under contract through next year. There's going to be half of the drivers on the grid who have contracts ending.
Yeah.
My God. What so I think, if it was actually signed, I think Freddie would have confirmed it. He hasn't. So I think it's still speculation. But
It's going to be an interesting year next year because this is a historic year for so many reasons, but one of them being that this is the first time ever in the history of Formula One where the drivers do not change. Not a single driver is changing between 2023 and 2024. Yeah. That has never happened in the history. Now,
yeah, that's quite fascinating.
Then we go into 2024. We're talking one more season before a major engine regulation change.
Yeah.
And we're talking contract extensions up for over half the grid.
It's 12 drivers.
Yeah, 12 drivers. So it's nuts. 60% of the drivers are fair game to go wherever the heck they want next year. And a lot of these drivers, some of these drivers, Guan Yu Zhou, Logan Sargent.
Yeah, they can go anywhere, out of F1. Like, that's where their options are.
But there are going to be some interesting people like Carlos Sainz, like Sergio Perez, like Alex Albon, that are going to have their contracts up. And it's going to be like, where are these people going to go? These are desirable people within the small world of Formula One.
And this is, I think, coming back to this duo, there's no clear alpha dog duo, right? Like, the team has trying to peg their guy.
Yeah.
Science isn't having any of it. So the question is, do we see these two remaining teammates after next year?
Well, I think you'll see them in the sport. My question
is, of course, they're going to both be in the sport. I don't know if they're going to both be teammates at Ferrari next year.
That's my question.
After next year.
So if you're Shaw, what team would you go to?
So this is where it comes back down to, ghosts of seasons past, right? Ferrari is a phenom. Every driver dreams about driving
100%
for Ferrari, right? But you're only as good as your last race. And when you've had 15 years of last races,
yes,
where you haven't won, at some point your history can't overcome that. And
that's the story of Ferrari, is that they're chasing a dream, but they're being chased by their history at the same time. It's a weight that no other team truly experiences.
And so I think if Ferrari cannot figure, and this is the same thing for Mercedes as well. Mercedes, not in quite the same way as Ferrari, but both of these teams have some of the best drivers.
Yes.
Hamilton for Mercedes, Charles for Ferrari, and these guys deserve a car that can win. Yep. And when you have Toto Wolff saying this car does not deserve a win, right? That makes a driver of Lewis Hamilton's caliber feel a certain way, and we saw that show up. You've seen this season with Charles, there's so many moments where it was just frustration and anger, and he's
let down.
He's been let down by the car, by the team, and you can only let down someone of that caliber for so long before they start seeing what other opportunities are available. Because at the end of the day, drivers are there to win.
And where would he go? I don't think he would go to Red Bull. Max is too dominant.
And
he wouldn't be able to get up to. I don't feel like he'd be able to get up to speed as quickly. He would be able to catch Max immediately.
Yeah, I feel that Danny's. There's already talks of Danny potentially moving if Checo can't get his stuff together. So I feel like Red Bull's off the table. I don't think Mercedes is off the table.
I don't either. That's what I was going to say.
So I think.
Which seat? Well, Hamilton's safe.
Yeah, so it'd be Russell's.
It'd be Russell's seat.
So it'd be Hamilton.
Think if Leclerc's people went to Toto Wolff and said, hey, Leclerc would like to talk about 2024 at 2025 joining the Mercedes team. I bet your bottom dollar Toto would take that
tell
meeting.
Russell and his good looks to move aside.
Exactly. Russell, you're too pretty. Move on for the next prettiest person on the F1 grid. Charles Leclerc.
I mean, I think like because McLaren, those boys are locked down. They're not going anywhere.
Nah.
And they're also one of the better pairings. And Piastri's
I have a feeling McLaren will be the hill that Norris dies on.
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, I think Mercedes is a possibility. I really do.
I don't see any other.
No.
I think Christian would take Charles. I don't think Charles would take Red Bull.
Yeah,
Max is chewed up and spat on every teammate.
Yeah, it's just a graveyard for
teammates.
Yeah. And who wants to go and die in Red Bull?
No.
Like, you can't catch this guy. He's a machine. He
makes great drivers look terrible.
Yeah.
So
every one of his teammates are good drivers.
He made Alex Albon look like an F2 chump, and then he goes to Williams, and now he looks like a Greek god.
I know. He made Gasly look like the worst, and then Gasly goes and wins.
Gasly goes, and then within a season, he goes and starts crushing it with Alpine. Yeah,
I think it's Checo, a race winner, look like he has no idea how to actually drive.
The narrative around Checo is not that he was second place in the drivers' championship.
As much as Checo would have loved that to be the narrative, that was not the narrative.
Not. So I don't think Charles goes there. I think the only team that he would consider going to, leaving Ferrari, would be either Red Bull or Mercedes. I don't think he'll consider Red Bull. I think, if anything, it would be very interesting to see Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc racing for Mercedes.
It would be very interesting. The only way that happens is if Mercedes somehow gets their stuff together, or they show promise.
Yep.
And Ferrari continues to blunder.
Yes.
And continues to fail.
I think they have to show. I don't think they have to show a ton of promise. I think they have to show that they're maintaining second. I think what will sell Charles is what other constructors sign on to keep their Mercedes power units for 2026. Because you've got McLaren, who is on a rip right now.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently whatever Zach and their team saw at the Mercedes factory for the 2026 regulations made them sign on until 2030. 4 years of a brand new engine, and they were like, "Yep, we'll give you 4 years into brand new engine regulations." So
exciting for you, potentially.
But if Aston Martin stays with them, if
who else has Ferrari? Haas
has Ferrari. Alfa Romeo has Ferrari. So now. Not Alfa. Well, it wasn't Alfa Romeo. Well, it was. It was Alfa Romeo. Now it's. I've forgotten the name.
Sauber?
No, they actually announced their name, and it's like Steak. I think it's Steak or something.
Oh
it's
God!
I just think it's their main sponsor. Again, we don't care about the lower teams.
No, we don't at this point. Yeah, I mean, I think. Here's the thing. You've got a guy again who's hungry, who's able, who's proven himself. He can do the job. He needs a car that will allow him to win. He needs a team that will allow him to win. And so if he believes Ferrari can do that while he's there, I think he stays. And potentially these rumors are actually, proven to be true. Right now, they haven't been verified, so it's hard to say. But it is interesting that Freddie is taking his time, seeing how things land. I think Sainz is more of a question mark at Ferrari to me.
Yep.
Than Charles is.
But I don't think. Okay, so the Sauber team is going to be Steak F1 team. Sweet. Steak F1 team kick Sauber.
That's disgusting. What is even Steak?
Steak is their main sponsor, but also Kick is their main sponsor. So, it is what it is. I agree with you. I don't know where Sainz go. Here's the thing, right? I don't think Sainz is going to get taken by Mercedes. I don't think Sainz is going to get taken. Well, he might get taken by Red Bull, but I doubt it. I think Sainz would want to stay at Ferrari. I don't know if he will.
Yeah.
I don't know who would take him.
Interesting to think about where these guys go, what happens in the future for this duo. But the one thing I'll say on these two guys is they have been neck and neck this season, and they've been closer than anyone else has, which ultimately at the end of the day is what you want to see as a team principal.
Yep.
You want to see your drivers pushing themselves, pushing each other, and pushing the car. And so I think even though Ferrari has had a really challenging season, they've not been able to grasp, the glory that they've seen in the past. I think a good thing is they have a new team principal who I think is righting the ship. I think he's making better decisions. There's strategy changes that look like they'll be coming down the future. And they've got the closest driver pairing.
Yeah. I think honestly, we can keep talking about the drivers till we're blue in the face.
True.
The thing that really happened this year that has been the theme for Ferrari for probably the last better part of the 3 years isn't the drivers. It's the team that is supporting them.
Mm-hmm.
This year we saw botched pit stops again. We saw a lack of intentional strategy and out-of-the-box thinking again.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a team principal, your favorite quote of Freddie's, there are changes that have to happen within our operations.
Yes.
So I guess my question to you is, what do you feel like if the drivers are so close and they're pushing each other and they're pushing the car, what's the real opportunity for Ferrari? What do they need to change going into next year? Besides, yes, their car needs to be better.
Yeah.
Aside from that, there are other controllables that contribute to an F1
There's
team.
other key players that it would appear need to find a new home.
Goodbye.
I think Freddie's been there for a year.
Yep.
Usually the first year, you kind of give it to him, right? He's brand new. It's a massive organization. But I think he's taken the year. He's paid attention. He's seen what's working. He's seen what's not working. And I think there's going to be changes coming on next year. And so the drivers aren't going to change. Hopefully the car changes.
Yep.
Right? I think the changes are happening elsewhere. And I think they need to go after talent, strategic talent, bring in folks who can help support their drivers actually win, who can help avoid mistakes you just shouldn't be making at that level.
100%.
And I think those are some of the more important changes. Now who are they going to get? I don't know. Who are they going to pull from? I don't know. But Freddie, I think, has seen enough to know that those are the places where he needs to.
And he has the contacts. He has enough clout in the industry. He has enough time within the paddock to know who he needs to pull on and try to recruit.
Mm-hmm.
And for him, although they haven't won in 15 years, at the end of the day, they
Ferrari.
are still Ferrari. People love to go work for Ferrari.
Yeah.
There is something very different about the team. But I agree with you. There are changes that need to happen. And I think next year, we may not see a ton of different things come from Ferrari. We may see the same results. We may see them in fighting for P2, P3 with Mercedes again. Who knows? But I think what we definitely will see is there are going to be some very interesting personnel changes next year at Ferrari. Now, the thing with Formula One is that everyone, not just the drivers, are on contracts for certain periods of time.
Mm-hmm.
So the very real reality is that Fred could have already pulled the trigger on many of these hires, but they won't come into Ferrari for a year, 2 years. And then for some positions, there's essentially like a version within Formula One of like a non-compete. Like you can't just quit in January and then you start in February from Red Bull to Aston Martin. There's what's called gardening time, which is basically
you just go garden.
that's what it's insinuated. But it's a period of time where you have to wait between teams. And so all of this is to, cross regulation, secrets within teams, all that kind of stuff. And so that's why, harking back to one of our favorites, Otmar at Alpine says it's a 5-year plan. We've got to hire the right people. Those people don't start for 1 to 2 years, 3 years sometimes. But if we can get into a flow and start getting the right people, then the changes that need to be made can be made. Ferrari, to me, needs to stop focusing so much on trying to control the narrative around why they're not winning anymore and why they're not number one. And they just need to focus on how to get back to being number one.
Yeah, they've had enough time for 3 5-year plans at this point.
Every year it's the same thing. We're not there. We're not winning, but we're going to take it to Mercedes. We're going to take it to Mercedes. We're going to take it to Mercedes 8 times. We're going to take it to Red Bull. We're going to take it to Red Bull. Just don't worry about everybody else. Just make the best car and create the best team and go win races.
Yeah, that's it. If only it were that easy.
It's so easy. I don't understand. Why aren't we team principals?
I mean, there's some teams that, maybe that would never happen. Sweet Jesus, that would never happen.
No, it's not going to happen. I'm not going to be the next Günther Steiner.
No.
I'm not doing it.
No. Well, I am excited for next year.
Yep.
And I hope Ferrari comes back to themselves, right?
100%.
We know what they can do. They will know what they can do. Now they just need to go find themselves and find
exactly
the future version of the past dominance that they experienced as a team with Schumacher and when they were just on top of the world. And if they can do that, F1 will lose their brains.
The reality is that there's a few teams that are coming up against cost cap regulations. You have Red Bull, you have Mercedes, you have Ferrari.
They've spent so much money.
They spend not so much, almost all of it.
Unreal.
And so if we could come into next year and that money spent, that cost cap meant that we had 4 teams that were ripping each other apart, race to race, weekend to weekend, pushing one another. One weekend it's McLaren, the next weekend it's Red Bull, then it's Mercedes, then it's Ferrari. Like, we would have one of the greatest seasons of our lives. And that is one of the points of the cost cap, is that it would normalize the field. But there's always going to be those that have more capability, more advancement.
Yeah.
And Ferrari is one of those people. And I just want to see them pushing Red Bull, they pushed Mercedes this year, so I can't ask them to do that anymore.
Yeah.
I want to see them getting back to the front. They deserve to be.
They do.
They have the history. They have the pedigree. The reality is that they are on the better part of a 2-decade slump. And that's a tough place to be.
You don't want to be there.
What would you call the story of Ferrari season?
It's the ghost of seasons past. A shell of themselves, really. Doesn't mean you can't go back to being great. You can. But the season...
It wasn't what you expected. It wasn't what you hoped for.
No.
It was a 15-year repeat. Almost, but not quite there. And in Formula One, that is never enough.
Never enough.
The ghost of Christmas past, Negronis, an Italian review, and the F1 Rolling Start podcast. Thanks for joining us this week as we dived into the 2023 season, specifically all around Ferrari. Don't forget to sign up for your chance to now win one of our empty Negroni mugs.
Mine's almost empty.
Mine's almost there too. You can do that by signing up for our newsletter inside of the show notes, wherever you are listening to this. Thank you for joining us. Speak to you next time. We're taking a short break because we record on Mondays, and the next 2 Mondays are Christmas Day and New Year's. And
our wives would have something to say.
We value our marriages over this podcast. So we will see you the following week after that as we break down, I believe, 2 teams that week. We're going to hit two of the low rungs. We'll see which ones we take out. It might be Kick Sauber, the new Kick Sauber team. It won't be. We'll see you next time on the F1 Rolling Podcast. Thanks, folks.
Cheers.